Hello and welcome, everyone. Amber, tell me how you're feeling today.
I'm good, Martin. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling fantastic. I'm
Oh,
all ready for another conversation.
awesome. I'll bet you have a great idea of what to talk about too, don't you?
I had, yes. Would you
You
like to
do,
go
but
with it?
I'm not going to let you.
Oh, yeah. We're there. Okay.
I'm commandeering this one because
Okay.
I think we need to address the elephant in the room every room you and I are always in together. There's an elephant in the room. And I know the elephant, you know the elephant. Not a lot of other people know the elephant. And when they find out about it, they're like, what? And it freaks them out. So I think we should bring the elephant out in this room. And that is
Hypnosis.
hypnosis. You even know the one I'm talking
I know what
about.
you're talking about.
Okay, so here's a little bit of context for me. So, I mean, we've known each other for years and years and years, and I have also known for most of those years that you have been a hypnotist or been fascinated by hypnosis and been training in all different iterations. So, to be honest, when we met 15 whatever years ago, I don't even know how long it was. I don't know what stage of development you were at, but I knew you were interested then and you partook in it and practiced it. What I don't necessarily know is the journey to that. And the other thing that I will say is, as our careers have progressed and we have come to this stage of our career where we're both sort of aligning a lot around similar leadership kind of values, it comes up often. It's on your LinkedIn profile too, which I think is really interesting because when people see the word hypnotist, I feel like, and in my experience, I go to like the guy who plays the gags on people and makes them bark on stage and like do all these weird things. And I think when I hear hypnotist, I feel vulnerable because it's kind of like, it's like magic that's being done to you that you have no control over. And the fear is real. Now, I have less fear about it because of my long term connection to you. But I have been in rooms where we've been together and it comes up and I can see the horror on professional and, people you're just meeting their faces because I'm like, oh gosh, they're literally picturing themselves squawking like a chicken when you say it. And as a professional colleague, I don't want people to have that reaction because you have educated me, but I don't know that we are, as a collective professional kind of world, well educated on what does it mean to be a hypnotist without making people bark like dogs and, cluck like chickens. Because I feel like that's what we think of. So my first question is, how did you get interested in hypnotism? And then I think the follow-up question to that would be, what's your why?
Great. So, thank you. Uh, and yes, I'm well aware the reaction
Mhm.
that the word hypnotist can have with some people.
Yeah.
Um, and so I began the journey quite simply. I was, as you know, been a lifelong martial artist. In the 90s, I studied at a place called Philosopher and Warrior, and I loved Philosopher and Warrior because it was exactly what it says it is. There are things you train in what we would now call mixed martial arts. There was some Brazilian jiu-jitsu, some kung fu, some karate. It was a wonderful place. But we would meet and it would be a 3-hour session every night. And so part of that would be martial arts.
Okay.
Part of that would be going in and learning leadership. So we might be listening to half hour of a Tony Robbins tape or Stephen Covey, or pick some topic that you're like, really, okay, kinesiology. All right. If
Okay.
you want to learn how your body works, let's learn how a body works so we can do this. One of those things that we learned, and very fortunately, one of the students at that school was Mike Mandel, who Mike
Yep.
Mandel now has Mike Mandel's Hypnosis Academy. But back then, he was doing stage shows
Okay.
and hypnotherapy.
Oh.
So he was doing both of these. And some of the nights in those 3-hour sessions, we'd shut the lights off and we'd all just find a place on the mat. And Mike would guide us through a hypnosis conversation.
Okay.
And
And
it
would
was
that have been
wonderful.
considered hypnotherapy?
Well, I don't know if you'd call it therapy. I'd just call
Okay.
it trance state. Okay, so
Okay.
Mike was promoting a trance state where he had suggestions.
Okay.
Okay, and if I look back and think back, now this is 30 years ago,
Yeah, yeah.
right? This is 30 years ago. I became really interested in the benefits of it. And at the time, Mike would throw classes on the weekend, and we would have these weekend classes.
Okay.
And the thing I was most interested in was self-hypnosis. Mike, how can I learn this so that I can keep the conversation in my own brain
Mhm.
working with positive suggestion?
Okay.
And so I learned self-hypnosis, and we even learned things like how to change how can you change your blood pressure? How can you change your own flush response?
Okay.
How can you change your pain responses?
Uh,
So I learned how to shut down my own pain responses. So when I got injured in 2003 during the Gulf War,
mm.
and I had a tooth that shattered, I put myself into a trance so the medic could fix it. They didn't have any
Oh,
anesthetic. So I'm like, don't worry, I'm going to put myself into a trance. It's going to be fine. Don't you? I'll let you know when I
wow.
can't feel it anymore. And I'm like, okay, I'm far enough in trance. Now I can do this. We're good.
Wow.
But it was about, I just want to be clear.
Yeah.
My early journey was about me.
Okay.
So, and it was hypnosis and neuro-linguistic programming. And I had a love of both,
Okay.
and I was studying both. And then neuro-linguistic programming, and I very simply, it's what is the talk you're giving to yourself?
Yeah.
That's the simplest way to do that.
Yeah.
And I knew that I grew up with some negative self-talk. I knew, and I think we all do. We all have some negative self-talk. So I wanted to have a journey where I was in control of that.
Right.
I just wanted to, there's a famous thing that Mike says all the time, which is, if you can't trust your unconscious, whose unconscious can you trust? I used to love that saying because I'm like, I just got to trust my unconscious. My unconscious is going to tell me. And your unconscious brain has like one real job: keep you alive.
Right.
All right. That's not a crazy thing, but we don't think about how we learned our programming. And when I say programming, I mean, first time we got into a conflict, we did something when we were a kid. We might still be running that same program over and over and over again if we've never examined it.
Mm-hmm.
And that might have use for us.
Yeah. And it
might
may not.
have disuse.
I was going to say, it does it serve you or does it not serve you? And oftentimes we don't ask ourselves those questions.
That's right.
Okay.
So if I have a why, the
Yes.
why comes later on in life, because I would never have called myself a hypnotist. I was a martial artist. Certainly I became a coach. But hypnosis was always a thing for me: self-calming, self-soothing, self-creating of safe space.
Okay.
We all have to recharge.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really think about becoming a hypnotist until I retired from the military.
Okay.
And
when did you retire?
I retired in 2017.
Okay.
And when I retired, I didn't quite get in the US, they call it the GI Bill. I didn't quite get my education money right away.
Okay.
There was some weird things going on in the world.
And that is like a program where the militaries, when you retire, actually help finance training outside of the military. Is that
That's
right?
right.
Okay.
And so they pay for you to either have some university education or some other education.
Okay.
And suddenly I got the letter saying, you're approved.
Right.
$80,000, go to school.
Wow.
And I was like, wow, this is amazing.
What do you want to do?
Yeah, what do I want to do? And my dad, who's a coach in his own right, just flawlessly said, hey, if you went back to school and you died the day after you finished school,
Wow.
what would you have had just as much fun studying had you died the day after you did?
Wow. Interesting question.
Yeah, Dad just really just hit me. And it came like, again, who's unconscious can you do? I'm like, wow, I'd become a hypnotist.
Done.
I was like, it came out. I'm like, I knew how to coach a conscious mind.
Right.
I know how to have a conversation that speaks to where are you, where do you want to be, and how do we get there, and all the various pieces in between. But to do that on an unconscious level, to really get in and play with the programming, right? And you know, I come from computers background, right? So I'm like, ooh, that's not just playing with the operating system. We're playing at the root level now. We're playing could I really learn how to do that? Could I do that? And so I'd certainly read more books on neuro-linguistic programming hypnosis over the years, but I looked up Mike and just thought, I wonder what he's doing today.
And discovered he had an academy.
Yeah, an academy. I'm like, this is amazing.
Wow.
I'm going to go do architecture of hypnosis, the course he offers in Toronto. This is wonderful. It gives us a chance to reconnect. I hadn't seen him
Yeah.
in years. We certainly remembered each other and certainly remembered our time training together.
Fascinating.
And I have been a member of that academy ever since and can say nothing but amazing things.
Cool.
Now, as much as we've gotten into this podcast, we're 10 minutes in already. And I got to tell you, and you know this about me, you know this. And if I start talking about hypnosis,
I know.
I cannot shut up.
That's
Like,
okay. I
I will
want
go
you to keep
forever.
talking. But okay, so let me frame it a little bit. Okay, so now we know where it started, and I think, but that sounds like a very natural progression into something that is obviously within your purpose, your passion and your purpose to understand and to think about conscious and unconscious. I mean, that just when I think about who you are as a friend of mine, I'm like, well, that's Martin. like so I now under those kind of uh contexts realize you had no choice. This was the path. And even your experience in the military, I just think, man, these were skills. You know, what I heard was I started to do this because I needed a way to control myself.
Mhm.
And I think that's an incredible thing. I mean, you're already in a martial arts, which is all about understanding how to embody that self-control
Yeah.
and to use it in ways that are really helpful for, you physically, but also for
Oh,
how
yeah,
you
yeah, yeah.
present. And so I get it. However, now on the other side, because you've now done this and you are officially a hypnotist, how do you use hypnotism in practice
Hmm.
as a professional coach? And maybe give us an idea of how we can feel more secure around you. Because I do think the chicken clucking, the dog barking behavior comes from this belief that you have powers that you can put on people unbeknownst to them. And I think that we need to eradicate that suspicion.
Sure. So I have never made anyone bark like a duck or quack like a dog, just so you know. Um, but really, my first statement will be, first off, defining hypnosis. It's really a difficult thing to do.
Mhm.
And I'm no expert to say what it is and what it isn't, but here's what I can tell you what I do know.
Okay.
Number one, it's communication.
Right.
So at its fundamental level, hypnosis is communication. So it's a communications tool set.
Okay.
So fundamentally, you get better at communicating when you do that. And as you know, communication is not just verbal.
Mhm.
There's tons of nonverbal, right?
Right.
Understanding calibration would be one of the first things I would say is one of the biggest things. When I'm talking, either consciously or unconsciously, I'm listening with my whole body.
Mm.
I'm listening for every wrinkle. I'm listening for every twitched eyebrow. I'm listening for every puffed lip. I'm listening for every movement of the cheek. Every one of those is a signal we're sending the world that not everybody's listening to. So the only thing I'm doing more than anyone else
Right.
is listening differently,
Right. Not just with your ears.
not just with my ears. I am trying to experience the entire person. So
Yeah.
what's going on for people in these conversations? It's the same thing that's going on in this conversation right here. So
Mhm.
there's two things happening right now that are happening. So one would be the interpersonal, and that's the psychodynamic loop. Big words for simply rapport.
Yeah.
Nobody makes anyone do bark, 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 quack, quack, quack if they don't have rapport.
Okay.
But in conversations, in your regular coaching conversations, in your regular project conversations,
Mhm.
we build rapport.
Yes.
As that rapport happens, we gain the power of influence,
Yes.
not control,
No, you're right.
influence. We gain the
Yes.
power of influence,
Mhm.
where if we say something, hey, everybody, I think this might be an influential way to go. It's not hypnosis. We're not whammying somebody with the fun. I'm doing the funny hands. I know you can't see it, but the zappy hands. Nobody is zappy handsing you and then saying, go kill the president.
Mm.
Okay. That Manchurian candidate doesn't exist.
Right.
And I'm not to say that there aren't levels of hypnosis for which I am non-familiar, where maybe
Right.
we could lose control of those. I'm not that hypnotist.
Okay.
The hypnotist I am works at a level of influence,
Okay.
and it works in a space, and this is the other space. So if there's an interpersonal space between,
Mhm.
there's a dynamic going on in the body. What's happening in the body?
Mhm.
And what's happening in the body is a trance-like state, whether we're talking about trance or even just your brain patterns. Everybody's driven a car from A to B. And if I said, hey, do you remember this section? There's whole sections you don't remember
Yes.
because your unconscious took over,
Yeah.
said, I'm going to drive you,
Mhm.
keeping you alive.
Mhm.
Well, your conscious brain said, I'm going to compute this stuff in my RAM versus my neat memory.
Right.
That's the simple way of what's going on.
Mhm.
It's really not a mystifying thing. So again, when we're talking about how does that apply in a project, how does that apply
Mhm.
in a coach, what it does is let's take let's take the project right here in town of making that overpass.
Okay.
Okay, you're listening in a different way, such that we're creating rapport. When you create rapport with people, it changes a room.
Mhm.
If I care that deeply about you, if I care that deeply about this project, if I can demonstrate care,
Mhm.
and you can see care, like we all know when somebody's,
Well, you can feel it.
that's right. It'll come in our bones when it's
Yeah.
happening. When people are able to experience that care,
Mhm.
they're able to be, and I'm just going to come back to Brene Brown on this one, vulnerable,
Mhm.
a genuine sense of vulnerable. And I'm not talking about the overshare vulnerable. I'm talking about the I'm willing to. So the word I like to use when I'm using the words hypnosis is talk about intimacy.
Mm.
And intimacy, not just in its romantic sexual sense, but in its vulnerability to share sex.
Right.
So in coaching, I often find it useful to say, what's the best path forward here?
Mhm.
Is it to have a cognitive conversation? Is it to have, and a conflict coach? Is this a conflict? Are you at odds with something?
Right.
Or is there something going on under the hood that you're not even sure about?
And do we need to lift the hood?
And do we need to
Yeah.
lift the hood and have a conversation with your unconscious? Hypnosis is a direct conversation with your unconscious.
Got
And
it.
here's the other zappy thing I want to talk about, which is where does your brain go when you're barking like a chicken? Are you gone? Are you off?
I don't know.
Well, exactly. So most times when a person is in a loop and say, hey, would you like to try some hypnosis with me? Okay, great. I try to explain a little bit of what's going to happen. Okay.
Mhm.
We're going to go into a relaxed state. You are completely in control the whole time. Your voice will go with me. That's an old Ericksonian line to say that we're on a journey together,
Mhm.
but you're always in control. If I say to you, hey, jump out that window on the 18th floor,
Mhm.
you're some part of you is likely going to come back and go, wait a minute, time out. That's
Right.
not working.
Right.
Okay. The part of you that you think of as conscious you is sitting in what's called the observer state.
Okay.
And so your observer's just going to be up over here watching.
Right.
Well, we're having a really wonderful conversation. It's just really a conversation with a different part of your brain.
Interesting.
And we all have different parts of our brain.
Well, and don't you feel, and I'm going to speak as a coach, I feel like a lot of times in that coaching conversation, what I am hopeful with the client for is that with patience and with specific questions, I can witness or bear witness to them tapping a different part of their brain
Mhm.
to to kind of unveil some things for them.
Yeah.
Because I can't see them. As a coach, I can't see what their brain includes. What I do see, and I was really fired up when you were talking about that hypnosis is a communication, because that's part of my wheelhouse, right? As an educator and certainly as a coach, I am always talking about human communication. And human communication is so little verbal. 93% of it is nonverbal and paraverbal. And that's exactly what you were talking about. And when you said, when I'm in a room, I am listening more than others, and and I made the comment, and not just with your ears, that that's powerful. And I didn't connect. It's a bit of a moment right here. I didn't connect hypnotism with that part of communication until this conversation. And I think that right there is the gateway into the understanding of what we're doing. You're not losing your power by being hypnotized. You are choosing to access a different part of your brain. And I'm imagining, in the case of, I know that hypnotherapy has been incredibly effective for some people that are really struggling with issues. So all of a sudden my mind is like, oh, I get it. Like a hypnotherapist is just coaching and and enabling an individual to find those other parts of their brain that otherwise they're not accessing. And whether it's trance state or whatever. I mean, I'm also an NLP practitioner, so I'm aware of that, peeling back the layers of our neuro-linguistic programming, certainly our kind of unconscious, and figuring out what of that serves us and what of that no longer serves us, but we just do it out of habit
Mhm.
as humans. So it sounds to me like hypnosis is actually in the hands of someone like yourself. It's just another tool in the tool belt.
And that's exactly how I look at it. It's one of the tools, and I'm so just so I'm clear, I'm not a hypnotherapist. There are
Right. No,
hypnotherapists,
I understand that.
and therapy is about a medical practitioner
Right.
who's doing medical process.
Right.
That is not me. That is not
Yep.
my wheelhouse.
Yep.
I am a
Nor are you
coach.
that guy who stands on a stage and gets people to
Yeah, I
bark
can
like dogs.
use hypnosis in the same way that I would use comedy. So
Right.
you don't know I
I know you
enjoy
like comedy.
I enjoy comedy.
Yes.
In the same way comedy has rules that works,
Mhm.
the only way I would use hypnosis in those moments would be to create a different kind of level of rapport.
Yeah.
We're in this together.
Yeah.
And as you build, we're in this together. Let's be clear. Every stage every stage comedian does that.
Mhm.
Every s- every
So do keynote speakers.
I was I was gonna say when you're giving an oratory
Oh,
speech,
yes.
okay,
Yes.
watch old footage of Hitler giving speeches.
Oh,
You can see trance state
yeah.
on the people he's talking to. You can literally
Mhm.
calibrate it and go, "Wow, that's
Mm. You know
powerful."
what I relate to? A slightly less threatening example, although equally threatening in some ways, is because I was raised in a cult. I have a lot of experience in, you know, rooms filled with people who are being master manipulated, and they're being master manipulated with messaging, with music, and with incredible power. And the people sitting in the pews, let's say, or the seats are actually completely unaware of the power that is sort of being wielded over them. And it's very interesting because that was my childhood, my observation. And I didn't see it for a really long time. To me, it was just the club we were
Yeah,
of,
yeah.
right? But now looking back, I realize, oh, like I remember in the cult that I was in, there were some songs that we would sing when we would gather, and that was often called worship or praise songs, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Beautiful music, but we would repeat the same stanza like 20, 30 times over and over with a very different intention and almost this repetitive kind of lilt. And I recall now looking back, like you could see a change in the
Mhm.
entire room based on that one line or phrase of a song being repeated over and over. And I recall even myself feeling very deep kind of connected emotions in those moments that I, in hindsight, go, wow, that was power over me. And I wasn't fully aware that that's what it was. And there's got to be some of that, NLP hypnotic piece in there.
Yeah,
And I think there's
absolutely.
there's good reason for us to be hesitant of these things and to be to want to understand it so that we don't feel as vulnerable. Um,
You're bringing up a great point there, which is around choice.
mm,
And so, as coach, questions are always the toolbox I'm going to go into.
mhm,
So Mike Mandel has a question that he likes to see often when he's talking with people, which is simply this: what do you want,
mm,
or what do you want to see happen or have happen? Now, if I ask your conscious mind that, it's going to come up with an answer.
right.
If I ask your unconscious mind that,
It's going to maybe
it's going to come up with a different answer, perhaps.
very likely.
And
Yeah,
so when we're talking about this, and the word I might use for that is an indoctrination.
sure.
Someone has given you a doctrine
Yes.
that maybe has use or doesn't have use for you.
Right.
And so if we start having conversations in a hypnotic state around that,
Mm.
around its use or its not use, it's positive influence or its negative influence, because some of the things you learned as young that I'm sure were indoctrinated still serve you today.
Oh, very much so. And
You know?
this becomes the challenge.
That's right.
And I think this is also where I think I have also heard, and correct me if I'm wrong, that hypnosis can be helpful here.
Oh, absolutely.
Because as a way of supporting someone who's trying to peel back the layers of what habits have I formed that help me and what habits have I formed that hinder me, and what's the difference, and how can I have power over them?
That's right.
I think hypnosis can really help there in ways that I think even as professionals, we have professional codes or unspoken rules or ways we work with one another that a lot of the times we just never ask each other, is this working still? Or is
Yeah.
this just the way we've always done it? And it is important. I mean, this is also why, and I know how you feel about this. I am such a strong advocate for having a coach. I believe every professional who really understands their purpose in their professional role and how they want to serve, I think you only really can do that to an optimized level when you have the benefit of a coach or a support system. And that can come in a bunch of different ways, but I think a clean way to do it is to pay someone to be that third party coach, facilitator, and, voice of reason sometimes, because that changed my life. And I'm not saying that, also therapy isn't wonderful and all these other things that we do to support one another. But I think this is important. And like I said, it sounds like hypnosis. And when you say you're a hypnotist, that's just another modality that you can offer.
Yeah, beautifully said. So anybody who's nervous, I always come back to this, right? If you're
Hmm.
nervous, I don't like fear. We've had this conversation
Hmm.
before. Fear only gives you fight, flight, or freeze. I
Right.
like caution. I like risk. I like doing proper assessments and
Hmm.
mitigating. If you're hearing the word hypnosis and you have anything other than communication and conversation, how learn about it.
Right.
There's a lot of great places out there. Okay, I come back to Mike Mandel Hypnosis Academy, but Melissa Tiers, Anthony and Freddie Jacquin. There's a whole bunch of really good trainers out there
Very cool.
that if you're in the universe of looking at this, they have much better definitions of hypnosis, what it is and how it can be used than I do.
Okay.
I'm in a scope where I like hypno coaching
Got it.
as a coaching tool in a toolbox of coaching.
Cool. Well, I mean, so helpful. Like, it's helpful for me. I've learned things and I knew some of that, but I didn't know it all in this moment. And thank you for giving us that context, because I think it'll be really helpful for a lot of people to understand. Yeah.
Thank you. And thank you for,
Thanks for letting me commandeer the conversation
it's
today.
always for conversation to commandeer. Thanks so much.
Okay. Bye bye.